Don't think because you haven't heard from me for a while that I went to sleep. No, rather I'm still here, like a spirit roaming the night, thirsty, hungry, seldom stopping to rest, anxious to please Sam. I love my work. Now the void has been filled. Hey everyone, Rosie here. I'm back with another anniversary archive from the CRTC SOS timeline. Grab a drink, sit back, and enjoy. Thank you for being here. Before we jump into tonight's archive, let's review a letter written by David Berkowitz from Kings County to Jimmy Breslin as a response to his request for an interview. The New York Daily News printed this letter on its front page August 31st, 1977. Dear Mr. Breslin, it has come to my attention that you wish to speak with me. Well, all you have to do is come over to my home at Kings County Hospital. At this time, I am unable to visit you. I am quite disgusted with the way the press has been spreading lies about me, but perhaps some of these can be ironed out in our meeting. However, I am not one to cry out a case of injustice. I hope Mayor Beam enjoys dribbling my head across the court. This is like a circus event with clowns and criminals. Please bring a beer when you come. Sincerely, David Berkowitz. June 22nd, 2007. In Focus. A Writer Remembers. Summer of Terror in New York. David Berkowitz, the son of Sam, serial killer, murdered 6 people 30 years ago. Interview with Jimmy Breslin by Tracy Connor, New York Daily News. It was 30 years ago this month that a letter landed on columnist Jimmy Breslin's desk at the New York Daily News from the madman known as the .44 caliber killer, or son of Sam, later unmasked as serial murderer David Berkowitz. With ominous words in block printing that Breslin likened to cinders from the flame, the note marked a fascinating turn in a drama that would terrorize the city all summer. The thirst for details was so enormous that when the Daily News ran the letter with Breslin's column that Sunday, it sold more than 2 million copies. Recently, Breslin sat down to talk about his role in one of the most infamous criminal cases of our time. This is a fine example of how sometimes something happens in the air, sticks to you, and 50 years later, you can't brush it off, he said. The shootings began in the summer of 1976, but there wasn't anything to connect the first few, and Breslin didn't pay much attention. Then on March 8, 1977, a Bernard College student named Virginia Voskerichian was shot in Forest Hills, Queens, just a few blocks from where Breslin lived. The next morning, Breslin went to the scene and spoke with Detective Andy Camera. Now, Andy was going through pine needles from a bush to see what they could find. The young woman had 1 shell in her. That's all they could find. Andy Camera told me, if this is another large caliber like the other 3 we've got in the city, 44 or 45 caliber, then we're in a lot of trouble. We've got a guy that's a serial killer. And he told me, you better stay with this. And I did. A creepy letter. Breslin began to write about the 44 caliber killer, and somewhere, Son of Sam was reading what he wrote. I got a phone call at my house from Anne Marie Caggiano, who was purportedly the assistant to the columnist, not a secretary. If you used that word, she'd break your fingers. And she said, I've got a letter here. I don't like it. It's creepy. So I said, well, what does it say? She said, I don't like it. On the back of it, it says Son of Sam. She says it's creepy. The letter was printed. Hello from the gutters of New York, and the ants that live in the cracks in the gutters and feed on the dried blood of the dead of the city of New York who died on the cement and are stuck in the cracks. Breslin sent his wife and his daughter to stay with relatives on Long Island while he remained in Forest Hills, taking precautions in case Son of Sam was stalking him. Meanwhile, the manhunt was intensifying and the city was increasingly on edge. They had these squads out looking for him and hoping they could get him on the streets someplace. They checked neighborhoods. They checked and checked. They went the wrong way down a one-way street with the lights off, so maybe they could catch somebody walking. The white neighborhoods were empty. People were in their houses. The neighborhoods of color were packed because Son of Sam was shooting white people. And the whites began to embrace and they loved the sight of any black walking through their neighborhood at night because Son of Sam was white. On July 31st, 1977, Son of Sam struck again, killing Stacy Moskowitz near a Brooklyn playground. While he was committing the murder, two cops ticketed a car that was parked nearby, and the summons eventually led investigators to the Yonkers home of Berkowitz. Breslin went to police headquarters while they questioned the suspect, and Detective Bill Clark came out and asked him about one night when he had driven out to Long Island to have a drink with his wife. He said Berkowitz claimed he had been there and would have shot him, except that the dog he believed gave him commands to kill had nixed the plan. He told them he drove past. He had an automatic weapon and he was going to shoot up the dance hall, and he was also going to shoot me. And he knew where I was staying at, and he knew where I was that night. But it had rained that night when I was in the bar. The dog told him, go home. I don't like the rain, so he drove home. He said to them, that's Jimmy Breslin. He's a good friend of mine. Well, I don't know the guy, but I knew the face the minute I saw it. I had seen him someplace in the night. He knew where I lived. He knew my home address. He knew where I was for that summer night. Greetings from the devil. Berkowitz confessed to 6 slayings, and on June 12, 1978, he was sentenced to 6 life sentences in prison. Breslin was there. They didn't give him drugs the day he was sentenced. He was being sentenced in Kings County Court by each borough for the crimes he had committed in the borough. It started with him walking into the courtroom. Nasa Moskowitz, the mother of the young woman who was killed in the playground, the last shot of his killing life, she was in the audience, and she stood up and started screaming at him. And he loved it. It was perfect for him. He was nuts. He was a muffin, just this lump of dough. But with that electric in him, that sizzle, 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 set him off and he exploded. He took 9 or 10 guards, that's not an overstatement, knocked them down like bowling pins, and tried to get out of the window. He couldn't, it was covered, but he tried. He had inhuman strength. You could see he was a dangerous man, and they took him away, and that was the last. What did I hear from him? He wrote a letter. I got a Christmas card. Merry Christmas from the devil. He sent me that from the can, and that's it. I've never heard or seen him or anything else. He's gone, but he sticks to me. I mean, I don't talk about him. I never tell stories about him. And yet, any place I go, that's all they want to know. Son of Sam. So what'd you think? A little embellishment on Breslin's part? I really enjoyed that archive, and I hope you did too. The article can be found in its entirety on the CRTC SOS timeline. Please give us a thumbs up and feel free to leave a comment. Thanks for listening.